The spirit of John Calipari lives on as Kentucky visits Gonzaga this weekend. Not at the Kennel.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. We're your host, the guy, beautiful gentleman to my side is Mr. Andy Patton. I'm your host, Isaac Shader, joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. Thanks so much for making us your first listen or watch. We want to remind you, gang, you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers, if you place a $5 bet and it wins, you're going to get $150 back in bonus bets. Check it all out at FanDuel.com. Welcome on in, all you everydayers. Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Discord chat. Man, it's so good to have you all here. Let's get right into it. Overview. UConn in the midst of another tough stretch, working to rebound from Miami. They conquered the first leg. Can it keep going? All 18 ACC teams are going to play their first game this weekend, while the Big Ten finishes up a week in which they've been playing 2 conference games each. Lots of great stuff coming up on the show. Andy, spread throughout the weekend other than Friday. Friday's kind of a, but whatever. We will get there. Where we want to start is the 2 ranked games that are on Saturday. Andy, we have a top 7 game and a top 11 game. You, my friend, are going to be at the top 7 game, which will not be at the Kennel, unfortunately. Thank you, John Calipari. It will instead be at Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, where number 4 Kentucky will visit number 7 Gonzaga, 10 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. Ken Palm has it Zags -6. Andy, you're going to be in the building for this thing. Here's my question to you, Mr. Locked On College Basketball co-host, also the host of Locked On Zags. Do you think Mark Pope, had he scheduled this 6-year series, is that what it is?
6 years.
Would he have played this game in the Kennel instead of, I'm just going to call it what it is, wussing out and playing it off-site?
Yeah, so the way that this series works is the first 2 games have already happened. Gonzaga's won both of them. They're 2-0 in the 6-year series. The first game was at the Spokane Arena, which is not on Gonzaga's campus, although very close. The second game was at Rupp. This is the 3rd game, and it is in Seattle. The 4th game will be in Nashville. And then
at Bridgestone? Is it at Bridgestone? There were the
I believe so, yes. Yeah. Okay. And then the 5th and 6th games will be the 5th game will be at Rupp, and then the 6th game, the final game of the series, will be at the Kennel. So the series will have 2 games at Rupp before they play a single game at Gonzaga's actual home floor. That is the way John Calipari wanted it. I do think Mark Pope would have done it differently. I don't mind this game being in Seattle because the return game is in Nashville. That to me feels fine. Gonzaga's played these types of pseudo home and home series before. I mean, they're in the midst of one with UConn right now. They played at Climate Pledge Arena last year. They're playing at the Madison Square Garden this year. They did it with Alabama. So that doesn't bother me as much as counting the game.
It's the lack of evenness that bothers me.
Right. The game at the Spokane Arena being counted the same as games at Rupp Arena.
Yes.
It's not valid. And it's we've kind of gotten over it, especially because Gonzaga won that game at the arena and then turned around and beat Kentucky at their home floor last year. So I think it's kind of water under the bridge at this point. But to answer your specific question, yes, Mark Pope has comfortability playing in Spokane at the McCarthy Athletic Center, the Kennel. He's played there from his time at BYU. I didn't look this up ahead of time, but I'm fairly confident in saying that in the time that BYU was in the WCC, Mark Pope has the 2nd most wins at the Kennel of any coach in college basketball outside of Randy Bennett at St. Mary's. Mark Pope is comfortable there. He's won there before. And I think he just understands the appeal of playing on-campus games. He understands the Kennel and the difference between playing there versus playing at the Spokane Arena versus playing at Climate Pledge Arena, which is going to be a pro-Gonzaga crowd. The largest alumni base of Gonzaga alums outside of Spokane is in Seattle, and they're going to fill that place, including myself, going to be there. But, yeah, I think that Mark Pope probably would have valued the home and home aspect of this series had he been the one to schedule it. And I know a lot of Gonzaga fans are not as happy that he's going to be the one they're coaching against, because he's had a lot of success against Gonzaga in the past. And frankly, he has more talent on his roster now at Kentucky than he did on many of those BYU teams that either upset Gonzaga or came very, very close to upsetting Gonzaga during his time with the Cougars in the WCC.
I think a difference in that, though, might be like while Mark Pope gets it, the kids in the BYU uniforms also got it. I don't know that the Kentucky players, both those who are homegrown, meaning like started at Lexington versus and the transfers, I don't know that they'll get it at the same level as the BYU players did when they're in the West Coast Conference. Not to say that they won't, but I just mean not at the same level. Andy, that said, what is like, if you had to boil this down to one key that you're watching for in this, and then we got to get to Wisconsin and Marquette, what would that be for you?
Yeah, I think the Clemson game exposed some of Kentucky's challenges with physicality in the front court. And to me, I feel like that's going to be a big hinge in this game. Graham Ike has not played like himself this season outside of the second half against San Diego State when he went insane. But outside of that, he has missed more bunnies. He hasn't looked quite as agile. He just hasn't quite looked like himself, and maybe he's just rounding into form. But for Gonzaga, he's their big physical player up in the front court, and they need him to be that kind of guy. Amari Williams is a tremendous defender. When he's not on the floor, though, Kentucky doesn't have a lot of physicality, and I think that's an area we saw Ian Shefflin do it for Clemson. I think Gonzaga could exploit them there. And then quickly, the other one would be three-point defense for Gonzaga. If you're a step slow in your rotations and you're not defending the pin downs and the other actions as adequately as you need to, Kentucky's going to get open looks. Kobe Brea's knocking them down 60% of the time. Otega Owe is a great three-point shooter. Volume-wise, Jackson Robinson's a guy you got to look out for too. So to me, if Gonzaga's not defending the perimeter well, that's going to be a problem. On the other side, if Kentucky's not able to stop Graham Ike and the bigs down low, that's a problem for them as well.
Really excited for this game. Nice that it's a later game. We'll allow ourselves to get the rest of Saturday in. And folks, I'm sure will tune into this as conference championship games from football are wrapping up. Andy, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, number 11 in the nation at number 5 Marquette. We got an in-state rivalry here, 1:30 Eastern on Fox. The Fighting Shaka Smarts favored at Ken Palm by 8. Andy, interestingly, both of these teams are coming off their first loss of the season. Marquette, that really, really interesting Big 12 Big East battle game on Wednesday night. Hilton Magic wins out 81-70 Cyclones. As for Wisconsin, they lost at home to Michigan, who is kind of on the rise. Dusty May's team's playing really well, but both of these teams are looking to rebound from their first loss. One of them's going to have 2 in a row, though. Andy, who's it going to be?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Wisconsin. I think this is a really tough ask for them to go get a win on the road, even if it's just down the street, effectively playing at Marquette. But, I think Marquette is a team that doesn't have a ton of size and doesn't have the rebounding prowess that like Michigan does. And what we saw from Michigan and Dusty May's team was using that two-headed monster of Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden to just dominate Wisconsin.
It's working, man. It's working.
It's working really well. And Wisconsin had no answer for it. And I think that Wisconsin is in a better position against Marquette because Marquette doesn't have that kind of 1-2 punch in the front court. They obviously have elite guards. Cam Jones has played like an All-American this year, like we thought he would. And that's not to say negative things about David Joplin or Ben Gold. Those guys are both good. They just they're not able to be as effective against Wisconsin's front court the way that those Michigan guys were. So I think that is a bit more of an advantage for Wisconsin in this one, but at the same time, Shaka Smart's such a phenomenal coach. Cam Jones is a load. It's kind of going to be a Cam Jones versus John Tonje type situation to see which of those two guards can have the better performance here. But even though I think that Wisconsin matches up better with Marquette than they did against Michigan, or even for Marquette, I think Wisconsin's a bit of an easier matchup than Iowa State. And so I think Marquette's ultimately going to win this one. But it should be a fun game between two pretty good teams.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I'm super excited for that Tonje Jones matchup. And it really could very well be like whoever wins that battle wins this entire war. Ultimately, though, I think it is Cam Jones and therefore Marquette that wins it, Andy.
Well, Isaac, UConn heads out on the road to face Texas. They just got themselves a big win over Baylor as part of the Big East Big 12 Challenge. And while this game obviously is not part of that, now that Texas is in the SEC, we do have 4 other Big 12 Big East matchups coming up this weekend as well. We're going to talk about them, some other non-conference games, all coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, I love a great deal just as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to go to great lengths just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No big hoops to jump through. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. And it turns out it really is that easy. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. All plans come with a high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, all you have to do is go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. That's mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on the first 3-month plan only. Speeds are slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, guys, I got some more non-conference games to talk about here coming up this weekend. Then we're going to close out the show talking about the ACC and Big Ten, who I think have a combined 16 or 17 conference matchups coming up this weekend. So lots of hoops to take in. We start with UConn. Danny Hurley's Huskies going on the road to the Moody Center to take on the Longhorns of Texas. This game is one of the later games. It's one of the first ones we're talking about, but it's not till Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN. Ken Pom favors the Horns by 3. In this one, UConn obviously survived the first leg of their very difficult 3-game stretch where they play Baylor at home. They won that one. Now they're playing Texas on the road, and then they'll play Gonzaga next Saturday, the 14th, at the Madison Square Garden. The big question for this game right now, and unfortunately, as we're recording this, we don't have any concrete answer on Alex Karaban's status, but he did not play for UConn in that game against Baylor, which, again, shout out to Danny Hurley and UConn for picking up a W against a good Baylor team without Alex Karaban. I know Baylor was missing VJ Edgecombe, and Jeremy Roach didn't play most of the second half, but still a really nice win for the Huskies. This Texas team, we've talked about them a bunch. Isaac, we're concerned about their depth. In their most recent game, they only scored 9 points off the bench. Those all came from Kendall Weaver. That is an area of concern for this team. I like UConn in this one, even on the road. I'm a little surprised to see Ken Pom favoring the Horns. I have a feeling that the FanDuel line will be different than that when it comes out, but certainly the status of Alex Karaban plays a significant role in UConn's chances of picking up a road win here.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely it does, Andy. And in his place, UConn went with the starting 5 of Liam McNeely, Solo Ball, Hassan Diarra, Jalen Stewart, and Samson Johnson. I'm still a little like, let's make a little Terrace Reed, Samson Johnson switch in the starting lineup there. But I bring that up to say I had noticed Evan Miyakawa had tweeted out on when was it he sent this? I don't know, at some point Thursday. I'm quoting Mia here. With Alex Karaban out, UConn deployed a new 2-big lineup yesterday with both Terrace Reed and Samson Johnson on the floor to good effect in a few minutes. Here's how that lineup looks at evanmia.com. Its predicted efficiency ranks 16th out of 78 UConn lineup. So I don't think that's like a groundbreaking thing that's going to change things for Dan Hurley, but it could be a very effective utilization tool in small moment, obviously Shedrick would have to take one of them, but then what is Texas going to do with the other of them if Danny Hurley rolls that out? Just a interesting wrinkle for me to watch.
Yeah, I agree. Arthur Kaluma is likely going to be the person tasked with that responsibility. Right. He's a great rebounder, but doesn't quite have the same size as either of those guys. Terrace Reed has just been a monster this year. I'm excited to see if Danny Hurley is going to utilize him more. He's been very kind of reticent. He likes having one of his premier bigs come off the bench. Obviously, it's worked well with Klingon and Samson Johnson in the past, and I understand that. But with Karaban, as long as he's out, I think you do want to have some more size on the floor. So it'd be interesting to see if that is something that we see from this game. A couple more games wanted to talk about here. The US LBM Coast to Coast Challenge. There's a pair of games going on. They're both at the Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas. The first game will be the 22nd ranked Aggies of Texas A&M taking on Texas Tech. That game is at 3 p.m. I think these games are both on Saturday. 3 p.m. on ESPN2. Ken Pom favors Texas Tech, the Red Raiders, by 1. And then our other game, Vanderbilt's taking on TCU at 12:30 on ESPNU. Ken Pom favors the Horned Frogs by 1 in that one. Isaac, what kind of stands out to you with these two matchups?
It's interesting, Andy, because A&M is the ranked team here at 22, but I like Texas Tech better as a team. I like that we're getting this game in Fort Worth. Dickies Arena is one of those that they use for NCAA tournament games, so it's good to get games in those kind of arenas just to get teams exposed to that. And so really, really interested to see. I think we think Grant McCasland is a great coach, and I think we think Buzz is a really good coach too. And so I think this is a good coaching matchup, and interested to see what can happen in it. Interestingly, look, I know TCU's in their home state. Vandy is off to this 8-1 start. They're up to 68th at KenPom. They started 95th in the season. And so I think in not both these games, but in this game, I think it might be a wrong team favored kind of situation here. I think I might actually be leaning Vandy, Andy.
Yeah, I am too. To be honest, I think the SEC has looked so unbelievably dominant.
It's
and
insane.
I don't think that you take, one game results should rarely matter that much with regards to conference affiliation. But I mean, 16 games between the SEC and the ACC, I think, have given us a pretty solid picture of the very least, the depth of the SEC is significantly better than the depth of the ACC. And I don't know if we'll feel that same way about the Big 12, but I'll tell you what, Vanderbilt beating TCU in Fort Worth is going to be, if that happens, that's certainly going to continue to drive the conversation about the SEC's depth, because Vanderbilt coming into the season is kind of one of the few SEC teams that wasn't really projected to be in the NCAA tournament conversation, even as an at-large bid, while as TCU, certainly not, kind of in a similar spot of like just on the other side of the bubble preseason conversations, but they were like 10th, 9th, 11th, somewhere in there in the Big 12, and Vanderbilt was expected to be towards the bottom. And obviously some of that is not knowing exactly what Vanderbilt had with Mark Byington coming in and a brand new lineup and a lot of new faces, but this Vanderbilt team looks good, and they didn't get a much of a test against arguably the worst power conference team in the country in Virginia Tech, who they throttled in the ACC-SEC Challenge. But if they go out and also beat a Big 12 team, I think we're going to start having some really serious conversations, not only about the SEC, which we're already having, but about Vanderbilt in particular and the job that Mark Byington has done so far this season.
And TCU, it's been a minute since they played. They played on Thanksgiving Day and Black Friday, but they lost both those games. Santa Clara by 17, Andy, and then in OT to Colorado State, 76 to 72. So going to be really interesting there. Andy, border war coming up. Going to be very interesting. Number one, Kansas, not going to be number one next. Well, I don't know, because everyone around them is losing.
Everybody else
so it's like, if everyone loses, we just don't even do anything. But number one, Kansas, fresh off that loss at Creighton on Wednesday night, which, by the way, good for Creighton, man. What a struggle they had early season. Really happy for them to get that. But heading to Mizzou for this border war game. It'll be 1:00 Eastern on ESPN2. KenPom has it Kansas -5. Do the Jayhawks get back in the win column, Andy, or do we can get a little bit from Mizzou?
Yeah, Kansas going to win this one. And I like Mizzou. I like the talent. They haven't quite put it together. At times they've looked good. But I think Kansas is Bill Self's teams come back from losses pretty well. And I think that's going to continue to be a trend we see. This will be again, if we're making the prediction that Vanderbilt beats TCU, this is the return, the Big 12 taking one from the SEC, although they're certainly going to be the more favored team for Kansas over Missouri, even on the road. In a rivalry game on the road, I think the line should be close. Like I said, KenPom's got it by 5, even though I think Kansas is a better team than that. But I think the Jayhawks are going to go out and get a W here.
Yeah, absolutely. Both win and I think cover that 5-point line very easily. Look, don't be fooled by Mizzou's 7-1 record. That loss is to Memphis. They haven't played they played Cal Tuesday, who's 114th at KenPom. Every other team is outside the top 230. So yeah.
And it was a big win over Cal, or it was a close game over Cal.
Nice comeback. Yeah,
they scored 98 points. They played well, but yeah, it's like, we're not sure about you yet.
Andy, we've got a couple more games in the Big 12 Big East battle. We recognize, folks, the pinnacle of this event was on Wednesday night, man. Wednesday night, those key matchups. So fun. Again, with UConn over Baylor and with Iowa State over Marquette. But we do have Georgetown at West Virginia. FanDuel has it West Virginia -7.5. I'm on board with that. Saturday, 2 games, K-State at St. John's. That could be actually an intriguing game, 11:30 a.m. on Fox. KenPom has it St. John's -10. Butler at Houston. Man, Andy, I don't know about Houston yet, my man. Houston, I'm a little eyebrows raised. I'm not saying I'm concerned, but I Yeah, 5:30 ESPN2. Ken Palm has it. Cougs -12. And then Sunday we wrap up. Unfortunately, this is the wrap up. Oklahoma State at Seton Hall, noon Eastern, FS1, Oklahoma State -1.
Yeah. Certainly the middle games on Saturday, I think, are the ones that are the most interesting. West Virginia, I think West Virginia clears Georgetown. They've played really well. Shout out Darian DeVries. And then I think Oklahoma State at Seton Hall that's just ugly. Those two teams, we'll see how Oklahoma State looks going forward, but I'm not super thrilled about that game. But the two in the middle, I think Kansas State at St. John's could be interesting. Kansas State has not played great as of yet this season, but they have a lot of talented pieces on that roster. I think they could make life difficult for Pitino's club. Butler Houston's interesting to me as well. Butler is a team that beat Mississippi State, who's looked fantastic. They're 12th at Ken Palm right now.
Northwestern the other day too.
Yeah, I mean they've played some good basketball as of late. I don't think that they beat Houston in Houston. If this game was flipped, Houston at Butler, I think we'd be having a different conversation. But it's going to be really hard to win at the Fertitta Center. But I am cautious about Houston at this point. If they throttle Butler in this one, I think we feel a little bit better. But if this is a close one, even if they win and it's kind of close, I think we might be having a few more questions about this Houston team, which really could lead into a longer conversation, which we'll have some other time, about the top of the Big 12, where we've already seen Baylor struggle a little bit. Arizona doesn't look like we thought they were going to look. Kansas now has a loss. If Houston doesn't do well in this Butler game, I think that starts to become a bit of a conversation.
No, it doesn't. Hilton Magic, baby. Give me them Cyclones.
Yeah, well, there you go.
A couple other games on Saturday. UNLV at Creighton, 4 Eastern, FS1. Blue Jays -11. Coming off that, I'm always curious to see how a team follows up a massive win like beating Kansas the other night. Washington State at Boise State. Boise State -6. Andy, that's shocking to me. 5 Eastern on CBS. St. Mary's at Utah. I'm very intrigued by that game. The Utes favored by 1, ESPN plus 7 p.m. And Colorado State at Colorado. Buffs -5 on ESPN plus at 8 p.m. Andy, this weekend also, there's all 18 ACC teams against each other in action for the first time and 6 more Big Ten battles. Which conference matchups are we most excited about? We'll tell you all about that in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Why? Well, because right now, new customers, you can bet $5. And guess what, Andy Patton? If you win, you're going to get $150 back in bonus bets. That's big time. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So maybe you're watching, you get a hunch in the middle of the game. You can go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more right there, literally on that same page where you placed your bet. Andy, not much going on Friday night, but 19 Illinois does visit Northwestern. Illinois favored by 3.5 at FanDuel. I think they're going to get that, Andy, but we'll see if they can cover that. I think they win. We'll see if they can cover the spread on the road. Going to be interesting. If you want to get in on that action or any of this other conference action we're about to talk about in segment 3, go check it all out at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. In case you forgot, there are 18 teams in the ACC. That's a lot of teams, Andy.
It's a lot of teams.
14 of them, as you said earlier, lost on either Tuesday or Wednesday to an SEC team. But we do get the ACC in action against each other for the first time this weekend. All 18 teams play in one game, and then they'll go back to non-con play. We got 8 of those games on Saturday. Sunday is number 9 Duke at Louisville, 6 p.m. Eastern on ACC Network. Duke -8. I think that game would have even more intrigue if Cason Pryor was not on the shelf for the rest of the season. Still very bummed about that for Pat Kelsey's club. Andy, we were talking about it pre-show. There's not many of these games that are all that sexy to us. We've got 2 of the other ranked ACC teams. 18 Pitt at Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech at number 20 UNC, although neither of those teams are going to be ranked next week. Let's be honest about that. I think the Saturday ACC game that intrigues me the most is Clemson at Miami, noon Eastern on ESPN2, Clemson -6. Miami really should have beaten Arkansas in the ACC SEC challenge. Wasn't able to pull that off. Clemson got that massive win at home, giving Kentucky their first loss of the season. Andy, what do you make of that game?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that Pitt and North Carolina probably won't be ranked by the time next week rolls around, but Clemson will. And unless Clemson gets absolutely smoked by Miami, which I don't think is going to happen, but if Clemson wins at Miami. They're absolutely, unquestionably ranked next week. If they lose to Miami, but it's close, maybe they sneak into the top 25. We'll see. But yeah, that is definitely the most interesting game to me. A lot of these other matchups, I mean, I'm curious how Pitt responds to getting thrashed the way that they did, but they're playing Virginia Tech, who's just not very good. North Carolina at home against Georgia Tech. I'm not worried about the Tar Heels in that one. So those are the two teams that I'm interested in, but I'm not really interested in either of those matchups. The other games, I mean, Stanford at Cal is a rivalry game, but neither of those teams impressed me all that much. Florida State at NC State, Virginia at SMU, BC at Wake Forest. Again, I'm kind of curious about Wake Forest, but Boston College hasn't looked all that good. Syracuse at Notre Dame. I mean, just not like decent teams, but the teams that I'm interested in, I don't really love their matchups. So Clemson at Miami is the one I like the most. I'm curious to see how Miami responds to that near win over Arkansas. Can they kind of rally the troops and win at home against a good Clemson team? I think Clemson wins. I think they go on the road and I think they take this one, but I think it's going to be close. KenPom has it by 6. I think it's going to be a game that comes down to free throws, comes down to the last couple of possessions. Be interested to see how Miami, again, how they respond to Jaleel Bethea, their star freshman. Hasn't been that great. He's coming off the bench. He's only averaging like 6 a game. Can he kind of step up and have a signature game? What do we see from Lynn Kidd? Nigel Pack obviously has been fantastic at Miami for the last 17 years. So we'll see what he can do against this Clemson team. Obviously, Ian Shefflin being the big piece for the Tigers. I think it's going to be a fun one on a day where most of the rest of the ACC action doesn't really excite me.
Andy, the chef has been cooking, man. He's got 13 or more rebounds in, I think, 4 straight games, if I remember correctly, including a career high 20 the other night against Kentucky. You mentioned Clemson not ranked. You know where Clemson is ranked?
Locked on college basketball,
baby. They're number 25 in our poll. That's good stuff. Any chance Louisville? By the way, I would take Clemson to win this game straight up, but I would pick Miami with the points, just for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Any chance Louisville has anything for Duke?
No. Unfortunately.
The answer is no.
Yeah, the answer is no. And you obviously mentioned Case and Pryor. They also lost Corin Johnson out for the season with an injury as well. Just 2 really tough losses. Pryor's the more impactful loss on the floor, but to have 2 of your guys go down with injuries in that short a span, Louisville hasn't done well on their home floor, unfortunately. And I think that will continue with this game against Duke. Hopefully they can give them a game, but I feel for Pat Kelsey because they've lost to 2 good teams at home. But when you're trying to rebuild a brand, when you're trying to kind of get fan interest back after the Kenny Payne era, to get thrashed in 2 consecutive games at home is really not fun. So they really need to play at least competitively against Duke to not take a 3rd straight blowout loss on your home floor. People are going to stop tuning in. And that's the last thing that this Louisville team needs.
Yeah. Although, maybe you hide away for a little bit and show back up in ACC play where it doesn't seem like the ACC is all that great and they can
maybe so.
Win. Andy, 7 more Big Ten games. 1 tonight, we already mentioned in the FanDuel read, Illinois at Northwestern. We got 4 on Saturday, Rutgers at Ohio State, Nebraska at Michigan State, Iowa and Michigan, USC, who, they had a shot on Wednesday night to knock off Oregon. They couldn't do it at home. They're at Washington. But Andy, it's these 2 Sunday afternoon games that really stand out to me. Maryland at number 8 Purdue, noon Eastern. I love when we start getting to the like early Sunday Big Ten games, man. It's so fun. Noon Eastern on Big Ten Network. KenPom has it Purdue -4, and then UCLA going to number 12 Oregon. That's 6 p.m. on Big Ten Network. Oregon -4 in that one. Andy, Maryland took Ohio State to the woodshed in the first half on Wednesday night. Can they follow it up? Can Derek Queen against TKR? Ooh, that is choice right there.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how these 2 teams respond, how Ohio State responds. They're taking on Rutgers. They're hosting Rutgers on Saturday, and then how Maryland responds after that huge win over Ohio State, going on the road at Mackey to take on Purdue. Those are the 2 games that interest me the most. I'm also interested in USC at Oregon. I think Oregon wins that one, but those
UCLA at Oregon.
Yeah, sorry, UCLA at Oregon. I'm not interested in USC at Washington. Apologies to those 2 teams. I actually noticed, I'm going to be literally in Seattle ahead of the Kentucky Gonzaga game. I could probably make a trip to USC at Washington. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I won't do that. Maryland could arguably be a top 5, top 3 team in the Big Ten the way they've played this year. Derek Queen looks fantastic. A really easy way to cement yourself as one of the best teams in the conference is to go beat the best team in the conference on their home floor. Really good opportunity for the Terps to go out and get a win at Purdue. Like you said, Derek Queen, TKR, that's the battle. That's the matchup. Really excited to see how those guys look in that one. That to me is the game of the weekend in the Big Ten. And honestly, I'm not sure it's that close. I'm very excited to see what those teams can do.
And it's interesting. I just looked. Finally, KenPom has like big like conference player rankings on the conference pages. TKR number 1 right now. Derek Queen number 4 in that ranking. So that makes it all the juicier. Great stuff there, Andy. Very excited to get some conference games going. I know we've already had some with the Big Ten this week, but man, should be a fun weekend.
That's going to wrap it up for us, folks. So much good basketball coming up this weekend. Like we said, all the ACC games, all the Big Ten games, some fun non-conference games as well. It's going to be a blast this weekend. We're going to be back next week getting you recaps on all these games, what it means going forward for the season, and then get you ready for another fun week of action next week. I always want to say apologies to the Lawyer family, even though we said some nice things about Purdue. Let's go Wildcats got Northwestern hosting Illinois tonight. And until Monday, peace.